It was my 81st birthday, or so I thought. I waited all morning, put on the blue dress Ellie gave me last summer, brushed my silver curls the way Paul used to like, lit a vanilla candle in the kitchen, even baked a lemon pie, my own birthday gift, in case no one brought one. No calls, no texts, no knock on the door. I opened Facebook just to be sure. Nothing, not a single post. And then I saw it, my daughter-in-law's new status. Busy Sunday with the family making cinnamon rolls and watching football. No mention of me, not a whisper, or worse they remembered, and chose not to show it. I sat back down at the table with the pie still warm, cut a slice, ate it in silence, and whispered to myself, it's just another day. But it wasn't. It was my birthday. The day I came into this world. The day I carried inside me like a quiet celebration every year, even when no one else did. The forgetting had started slowly. First, they stopped asking what cake I liked. Then they said, we'll do something next weekend. And then they stopped mentioning it altogether, as if I had never been born, never been young, never been someone who mattered on a calendar. I remember every birthday I threw for them. Ellie's butterfly cake at 6, Luke's cowboy-themed party. The day my son turned 12 and I made a baseball diamond out of frosting, his friends still talk about it. I never forgot. So why did they not because it was hidden, but because it was mine? Among boxes of photos, old recipes, a hand-sewn quilt, I found the album marked Mama's birthdays. Inside smiles, candles, children, hugs, and a woman who used to be at the center of it all. That woman was me, and she was still here, just waiting to be seen again. The photo album felt heavier than it used to. Maybe it was age, maybe it was memory. But as I turned each page, I found myself talking to them. To the pictures. You remembered, didn't you? You still see me. There I was in a red dress, age 38, blowing out candles, while Paul laughed behind the camera. Holding Ellie on my hip on her second birthday. Wearing a paper crown someone made for me at 65. There was evidence, proof that I once mattered. 81 years alive. At least 60 birthdays planned for others. Balloons. I blew up with aching fingers. Cards I made by hand when money was tight. Gifts wrapped in newspaper when gift wrap ran out. Celebrations I held for others, even when my own heart was grieving. One year, I threw Ellie's 13th birthday just 2 weeks after Paul passed. Not a single complaint, not a single moment where I said, let's skip this year, because they mattered. But I was starting to realize, to them I didn't anymore. It was buried on a cassette tape labeled Ellie 5th birthday. I slipped it into the old player and hit play. Static, then laughter, then my voice young, warmful. Happy birthday, my butterfly. Grandma loves you to the moon and back. I sat there and listened again, and again. And then I whispered back, do you still love me that much, Ellie? Do you even know what day I was born? To Ellie, to Luke, to my son, to the daughter-in-law who called me Ma when she wanted a babysitter, and that woman when I was inconvenient. Each letter began the same. Do you remember the last time you celebrated me? Because I remember the last time I celebrated you. I didn't mail them, not yet, but they were written. The words were real. The pain was shaped like ink and folded into envelopes of truth. If they could erase me, then I would rewrite myself. Not for them, for me, because the woman in those photographs didn't disappear. She just stopped being invited, and maybe it was time she invited herself back into the story. I made myself a cake. Just one layer lemon with cream cheese frosting, my favorite, the one no one ever remembered. I found the recipe scribbled in my old church cookbook, the page dog-eared and flour-stained. I lit a single candle. No balloons, no streamers, no Facebook posts, no happy birthday text from my son, nothing. But I still sang, softly, happy birthday to me. It echoed through the empty house like a lullaby that no one ever sang for me. And you know what? I didn't cry. It was the maroon one Paul always said made my eyes look like sunset. I hadn't worn it in years, not since our last wedding anniversary. I brushed my hair, put on lipstick, slipped on the pearl earrings Ellie gave me when she was 16 before she stopped calling, and I danced, with no music, in my living room. Just me and the version of myself they had forgotten. But I hadn't. 3 gentle taps, a pause, then another. I froze. Who would come this late? I opened the door. And there stood a young woman with tear-stained cheeks and trembling hands. Ellie. Not the little girl in the photo album, but the grown woman I hadn't seen in over 6 years. In her hands, a wrinkled card. Grandma, I found this in Mom's drawer. Your birthday. I didn't know. They never told me. Her voice cracked. I could barely breathe. She looked past me, saw the candle still flickering. Is that your cake? It wasn't the party I planned. It wasn't the apology I expected. But it was something. I thought you were gone, she whispered. They said you moved. Far away. That you didn't want visitors. And just like that, the silence they wrapped around me unraveled in her tears. She hadn't forgotten me. She had been lied to, not all at once. Just one. The one that said, if you ever feel forgotten, remember, I am part of you, stitched into your laugh, woven into your kindness, echoing in your favorite song. She cried harder. But this time I cried too, not because of sadness, but because for the first time in years, I felt seen. Ellie sat with the letter pressed to her chest. She kept looking around the house like it was haunted, not by ghosts, but by the echoes of everything unsaid. Why didn't Mom tell me where you were? Why did she say you didn't want to see me? I had no answer, only a memory. When he was gone, I became inconvenient. No one said it aloud, but I could hear it in their tones. She's just old. She needs too much. She had her time. They stopped inviting me to birthdays. Then Christmas. Then everything. One Sunday, I asked my son if I could see Ellie for her graduation. He said it would be too emotional or too inconvenient. They didn't want me to know. They didn't want us to stay close. She wasn't wrong. I didn't want to poison her heart with bitterness, but the truth was, this erasing me made their lives easier. No one to pick up, no one to visit, no one to feel guilty about. Just one problem. I was still alive, and I remembered everything. I didn't ask her to, but she did it anyway, on speakerphone, so I heard every word. Why didn't you tell me Grandma was here? Why did you say she left? She made a cake for herself, Mom. She lit a candle alone. Silence, then a sigh. It was just easier this way, her mother muttered. Easier. A word so cold it could shatter a lifetime of love. Ellie looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "You're not alone anymore." That night, the house felt different. Not because the paint had changed, not because the furniture moved, but because for the first time in years, there was laughter again. I'm not letting you wake up alone again, Grandma. She lit 2 candles the next morning. One for me. One for the version of herself they'd tried to erase. She looked at me and whispered, "We're writing a new story. Starting today." She pulled out old photo albums covered in dust. Some pages had photos. Others had pieces of wrapping paper. Dates scribbled in ink. Poems I had forgotten I wrote. She recorded me reading them. TikTok might finally meet the real Grandma, she joked. I laughed, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel hollow. She was documenting everything, not for vanity, but to make sure I was never erased again. At 3:00 p.m., she opened her laptop. A Zoom call, and suddenly my screen filled with strangers. But not just strangers' grandchildren I hadn't seen in years. A cousin in Michigan. A neighbor from the past. Ellie had tracked them down. "Say happy birthday, everyone," she said. They all did. Some smiled nervously, some cried. But they said it. They remembered. Not because the family reminded them, but because she did. Ellie planned a dinner. Not a party, but a reckoning dressed up in candles and casserole. She invited them, my son, his wife, the grandchildren who forgot. Even my sister who once said, "If no one remembers, maybe it's better that way." They all came. Because Ellie didn't just invite them, she called them out. There was one seat at the head of the table. It wasn't mine. It was left deliberately vacant. "This is the seat for everything you erased," Ellie said. She pointed to a screen on the wall where she played my photos' birthdays through the decades. Notes I had written. Videos she secretly filmed of me laughing in the kitchen. The room was silent, except for the sound of their guilt hitting the floor. He cleared his throat. Said he didn't think I cared about birthdays. That Mom never made a fuss. I didn't speak, but Ellie did. She never made a fuss because she wasn't allowed to. Then she turned to me and handed me a small wrapped box. "Open it, Grandma." Inside a calendar, handmade. Each page printed with a photo of me. 12 months of memories and truth. December. On that page, written in bold purple ink. December 12th, Grandma's reclaimed birthday. Do not erase. Everyone stared. I felt my hand tremble, but not from weakness. From strength. "This time I'll blow out the candles for me," I said, and I did. That night, Ellie didn't just stop at dinner, she posted the whole truth online. A video titled, "The Grandma They Tried to Erase." It showed my empty birthday chair, my photos, the quiet moments where I held my breath trying not to cry. And people saw it. Not dozens, not hundreds, millions. I don't know you, but I cried for you. This woman is my grandmother, my aunt, my mother. Thank you for speaking for all of them. Your silence spoke louder than their noise. It was the first time in decades I felt present, like I mattered. Like someone had pressed undo on a lifetime of being invisible. She said quietly, "We messed up. It wasn't an apology, but it was something. A ripple in still water." She asked if she could come see me. Not with gifts, not with excuses, just with ears to listen. And I said, "Come, but not for me, for your children, so they don't repeat this." Ellie's video didn't just reclaim my birthday. It shattered silence, pushed shame into sunlight, and gave voice to every woman who's been too quiet, too old, too forgotten. I wasn't just a grandmother in a video anymore. I became a symbol, a story, a start. A week after the video went viral, I received a letter in the mail. Not a bill, not junk, but something almost mythical in this digital age. A typed letter on fine paper signed with real ink. It was from a small publisher based in Charleston. They had seen the video, seen me, and they wrote, "Your voice carries the weight of a generation. If you're willing, we'd love to help you write it." My hands trembled, not from age, but from awe. Me, a writer. I had spent most of my life writing grocery lists, not memoirs. But something in me said, they erased your birthday, now write your birthright. So I sat at the same table where they forgot me and began remembering myself. Every night she brought over her laptop. We talked, we cried, she typed. Page by page, we turned pain into prose, silence into sentences. We titled it, "The Year They Forgot My Birthday." And I remembered myself. I never imagined I'd be signing copies of anything, let alone my own story. But there I was sitting beside Ellie in bookstores across West Virginia. Strangers hugged me, young women cried, elderly men thanked me. One even whispered, "You told my story," before I even knew how to say it. He walked into the bookstore in Bluefield like a stranger, slower, grayer, but still wearing that same guarded expression I remembered. My son. He didn't look at the crowd, didn't look at the stacks of my memoir on the table. He looked at me, and I just breathed. Ellie whispered, "Do you want me to send him away?" I shook my head. No, this moment had been waiting too long. "Why?" That's all I said, not in anger, not in blame, just, why? He sat down across from me like we were at Sunday dinner again, and whispered, "I didn't know how to celebrate you when I didn't understand you." He said that after Dad died, I reminded him of everything he didn't know how to grieve, that I loved too deeply, gave too freely. And in his pain, he punished me by pretending I didn't exist. He wiped his eyes. I thought if I didn't say it, it wouldn't hurt, but it hurt more. I reached across the table, laid my hand on his, and said, "You erased the date I was born. But today, I choose to remember the day you were born, and forgive you for forgetting me." He broke, right there in front of the line of readers' cameras and books. Not just in tears, but in pieces. And maybe for the first time since he was a child, he let me hold him. It took me 82 years to celebrate my own birthday. Not just to be remembered by others, but to remember myself. I brought flowers, not to place on someone's grave, but to place in my hands. I told the women from my book club, I don't want a surprise party. I want a chosen one. We baked pies like old times, but this time, they put my name on them. Because I finally realized I am the special occasion. For once, I didn't sit in the kitchen while the others laughed in the front room. I stood where the light hit, and I danced. At 82, they walked in holding hand-drawn cards. Each one said some version of, "I didn't know what you meant to me until someone told me you weren't there." My youngest grandson whispered, "Grandma, can I come sit next to you while you blow out your candles?" And I said, "You already are my wish." No cue cards, no prepared notes. Just one hand on my shoulder and words that hit the center of my soul. I spent years pretending she didn't have a birthday. But today, I see she's the reason I'm alive. The room went quiet. The candles flickered. And in that stillness, I felt something return. Belonging. I once wrote a letter on my 60th birthday. Not to anyone in particular, but to the woman I used to be. And the woman I hoped I might still become. It was tucked behind my Bible, folded neatly, never sealed. Because somewhere inside, I think I always hoped I'd one day read it aloud. Dear me, you gave so much and asked for so little. You kept the peace even when it cost your voice. You turned leftovers into dinner and silence into a lullaby. But somewhere along the way, they stopped seeing you. And you stopped seeing yourself. I wrote that line with tears. It was the first time I ever admitted I was tired of being invisible. That line haunted me for years. Because the truth is, I wasn't even sure I was my own friend anymore. When the people you raise grow distant, when your worth is tied to what you do rather than who you are, you start to forget. So I wrote that letter to remind myself. I existed, I mattered, I was enough. Not for sympathy, but for freedom. I read it like a prayer, like a reclaiming, like planting a flag in soil I was told wasn't mine anymore. When I looked up, there were tears, but not the kind that beg for pity. They were the kind that say, I see you now. It had been years since I'd stepped foot on that porch. The one where my son used to sit with his guitar. The one where my birthday cake once melted in the July sun because they forgot to bring it in. I didn't come to knock, I came to breathe. The yard was different, cleaner perhaps, but the mailbox still leaned the same way. I peeked through the window. A woman I didn't recognize was rocking a baby, my great-grandchild maybe, but no one knew I was there. Still, I stood, longer than I expected, and I whispered not to them, but to the walls. Thank you for holding me when no one else did. Carrying pain is like dragging a bag of stones through mud. At some point, you stop walking. So I left something behind on the porch, a little wooden box with a note. She was never gone, you just stopped looking. And inside the box, a photo of me on my 40th birthday. The last time they celebrated me like I was still someone they loved. I turned away with tears. Yes, but also with strength. Sometimes coming home doesn't mean reclaiming space. It means reclaiming the right to let go. I didn't want the house. I wanted my heart back. And on that porch in silence, I got it. 3 weeks after I left that porch behind, I received a call from an unknown number. I nearly didn't pick up. But something in me whispered, answer, this one matters. On the other end was a voice I hadn't heard since he was a boy, my grandson Eli. His voice cracked as he asked it. They told us you didn't want to see us anymore, that you disappeared. I couldn't speak for a moment. My breath caught between the lies I'd carried and the truth I had longed to say. No, baby, I was always here. I was just erased. Silence fell. And then his sobs. Raw, unfiltered, and heartbreaking. I remember your cinnamon rolls on Christmas. I remember you humming Patsy Cline when you cooked. And the blanket with daisies you always put over me when I fell asleep. My hands trembled. Not from age, but from realization I had not been forgotten. I had been hidden, but someone remembered. And that memory had grown into longing. I almost said no, out of fear, out of years lost. But instead, I said the one thing I hadn't said in years. Yes, darling, I'm still your grandma, and I've been waiting for this day. That call didn't fix everything, but it cracked open the door of my soul again. And that's all a heart like mine ever needed, not to be worshipped. Just to be welcomed back into someone's life. The knock came on a quiet Saturday afternoon. I opened the door, and there he stood, Eli. No longer the boy with skinned knees and pockets full of rocks, but a young man with eyes just like his mother's. And a heart I helped raise. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me like someone recognizing home after years wandering through strange cities. Then, silently, he held something out to me. A blanket, faded, soft, covered in daisies. It never stopped smelling like you, Grandma, Eli said, his voice shaking. Even when they said you were gone, I held it every night. That was the moment I cried not quiet tears, but a lifetime of ache poured out all at once. He wrapped the blanket around my shoulders, then wrapped himself around me. We stood in the doorway like that, 2 generations sewn back together by fabric, memory, and mercy. Grandma, he said gently, there's someone else who wants to see you. Behind him stood a girl no older than 6. Big hazel eyes, braids, and that unmistakable chin, our family's chin. This is Ellie, Eli said. I named her after you. My knees nearly gave way. I had a namesake. A new beginning in a world that tried to erase me. I laughed through tears. Sweetheart, I make the fluffiest pancakes this side of West Virginia. She smiled wide. And just like that, the kitchen that had gone silent for so long was alive again, with laughter syrup and the sound of healing. That night, as the candles flickered low in the kitchen, Ellie crawled into my lap and asked, Grandma, what was your favorite birthday? I looked at her little hands clutching the fork she used to eat 3 slices of pancake cake, and I smiled. A smile that carried decades of hurt and a sliver of healing. I had many birthdays, I said gently, but one of them, no one remembered. I told her not to burden but to share. 1 year, everyone forgot. They didn't say a word. No cake, no hug, not even a happy birthday, Ma. Ellie gasped. That's mean. I nodded slowly. Yes, baby, it hurt. Not because I needed gifts, but because it felt like I didn't exist. I kissed the top of her head. I made myself a cake, lit a candle, and I whispered to God, if no one remembers me today, please don't let me forget who I am. Ellie's small arms wrapped around me like a warm halo. And then she said in that soft, thunderous way, only children can... Grandma, I'll never forget your birthday. Can we make you one now? Eli brought out a muffin. 3 tea candles. And on that kitchen table that had once seen so much loneliness, they sang, "Happy birthday to you." I couldn't blow the candles out right away. My eyes were too full. Not of pain, but of something I hadn't felt in years. Being seen, being celebrated, being real. This was my new beginning. Not in a ballroom, not on a yacht, but in a kitchen warmed by second chances and syrup-sticky fingers. Because when the world tries to erase you, sometimes the loudest legacy is built from silence turned into song.